In this lesson, we're going to be looking at setting up a database. And we're going to be setting up a SQLite database to work within our application. And we have left this till the very end because setting up databases can sometimes be difficult and it can lead to sometimes some odd errors that you might have. And that's why we have left it till the end, and we kept most of the course focused on working off of this data object, which was storing information and storing content. And you could store it, you could refresh the browser, you could go open up another browser to the same path, and you'd see that those values were sitting there as well. So save it, delete it, and so on. And whatever we did on this page, we would be pulling into here because, of course, all of the data is still sitting on the server side of things, and it's not sitting on the individual browsers. The browsers are just pulling in that server data. So it functioned fairly similar to a database, the way that the database would function. And the big difference was, of course, whenever we stop our server, then we would be going back to our default data. So that was these two users that we had. And if we refresh it, if we restart it and refresh it, then we're back to our original data. So the solution for that, of course, is a database. And let's go through how to set up a database. So the database that we're going to be looking to set up is going to be SQLite. So this is a really light version of SQL. It runs off of a single database file, and we can really easily install it, again, using the Node package manager. So that's install, and it's going to be SQLite 3. So bring that package in. And once that gets installed, there's actually a file that I've copied and pasted, and that will set up the database. And we need to actually do a sudo install of it because this is npm install. So we did run into that permissions issue there. So let's do it again with the permissions. So I have created a setup file. I'm going to call it test database. And what this file is going to do is this is simply going to set up that test database. And you can see it here within the sidebar. So I've just sat it there on the root, and we can do node setup.js. And we see once we run that, we get this new file. So whatever we called it test.db. So we've got that file created here. And this is our blank database ready to go. So nothing is set up as of yet. There's still a few more steps that we need to take. And the next step is actually to set up our table structure. So we're going to set that up. So do another setup file, so another file, and call this one setup2. So this is going to set up the table actually. So just call it setup2. And I'm going to copy and paste this one in as well. So let's run this one. So just as we did the other one, so node setup2.js. And the reason we actually got this error is because we've got the run drop tables. So that basically, we threw an error because the table is not there. So if we got rid of that, we'd actually get another error now because now there's a table within that database. So if I go in there, there's actually a table that's sitting in here. So if I was to run the same one again, we'd see that no such table users. So let's comment that one out and run node again. And this time when we open it up, we see SQL format 3. So that one's set up and ready to go. So now we can actually write content into our database, and we can see content contained within our database as well. So next, let's do one more setup file, and this is going to be testing that we can insert users and information into our database. It's going to list out our database and a whole bunch of things just to make sure that everything is set up properly. So one more file I'm going to copy and paste in here. And you can get these files. I'm going to leave them as resources, so you can set up your database the same way that I'm setting this one up. And we can see that we've connected to the database. And I can quickly walk through what's going on here. So we're running through, we've got an open read write. We see we've connected to the database. So that gets output there. We insert into users a name and a password with the values of 1 and pass1. So we see that those are inserted there. We insert into users 1 and pass1 again. So maybe we could do pass2, or we could do 3 or 4 or something like that, so that we are able to distinguish between them. We're deleting from users where the ID is 1. So that's what's happened. We've deleted that one. And then we're updating the users where the ID is 5, but we don't have one with 5 yet. And then we're outputting all of that information. So we're looping through all of the users and we're outputting them into the console. So that's what's happening over there. So once we go through all of this, because we've inserted 2 and we've deleted 1, that's where we're ending up with only 1 output there. And then it runs through, and then finally it closes off the database if there's no errors. Otherwise, it will output the errors. And we can run this a number of times, and every time we run it, you're going to see that we're getting more and more values that are getting inserted. And once we get an ID of 5, then we get that updated value. So new value, and we can run this over and over again, and we've got more users that are available within our database. So everything looks like it's working properly, and go ahead and try that out as well. So the 3 setup files. So the first one simply sets up the database. So this is the database name. You can call it test database, or you can call it whatever you want to call it, whatever makes sense within your project. This one over here is creating the table. So again, the top part here is the same. It's just running that require. So this is just node functionality where it's requiring the SQLite database, and then it's specifying what value DB holds, and then we're serializing DB, and that means that we're able to run SQL into it. And over here we create table users, and if you're familiar with MySQL or SQL, it's pretty much the same thing when we're putting in requests. So these statements should be fairly familiar to you. Over here, we're creating a table, users. So we've got an ID. We're setting it as an integer. We're setting it primary key and auto incrementing it. So that's giving us a unique value every time it gets added in. We see that we started out with 1. We actually deleted 1. So we've got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and on and on and on. So the next ones are 9 and 10, and so on. So this one auto increments. And then we're creating 2 fields. So the first one is name. So this is text, and we don't want it to be null. The next one is pass text, and that's not null as well. And you can continue and add in as many fields as you want within this database, the same type of structure as well. So doing integers and text and so on. And then over here, we're simply just testing our connection. We're inserting into our database. We're trying some of the methods that we're going to be using in the upcoming lessons. So there's the insert, there's the delete, there's the update, and the select. So all of those are going to be used as methods that we have within the routes that we saw earlier. So next lesson, we're going to be hooking up our application to this database. So that's coming up.